A dog and a human. If I told you that the two of us were different species, you'd be like, yeah, that seems pretty obvious. But what if I told you something not as obvious, like how the fungi in a forest are more closely related to us humans than to the sunflowers in a field? You'd be like, yo, that's crazy. What do you mean, and how do you know this? And I would say, look at this cool thing many biologists call the tree of life. And according to the tree, mushrooms are our distant relatives. But don't feel obligated to invite them to your next family reunion.
But what exactly is the tree of life? It's a phylogenetic tree, a hypothesis of how different species evolved from ancestor species, and the relationships various species have to one another. But how do biologists know how each species evolved? And the tree of life includes organisms that were around way before humans even knew how to classify animals. So how do they determine where they are on the tree? In order to answer that, we need to learn about a process called speciation. Speciation is the evolutionary process in which a new species emerges from a currently existing one through allopatric, physical, or sympatric, reproductive, isolation. Let's look at a population of butterflies as an example. All these butterflies are the same species and reproduce in the same area. But one day, a small number of them fly to the east side of the forest and are unable to get back to the original population in the west. The separated groups can no longer interact with each other. Over time, mutations pop up in the DNA of the East butterfly group. The mutations are passed down to offspring, until eventually the number of mutations result in genetic differences that would make the two groups unable to reproduce with each other if they ever interacted again. Without the ability to produce fertile offspring, the two groups are now considered different species, thus concluding the process of speciation. However, these closely related species, also called sister species, are genetically closer to each other than to any other species. This is how biologists determine where species lie on a phylogenetic tree. The more similarities there are in the DNA of two species, the closer they are to each other on the tree. This is how the tree of life was constructed, and how biologists discovered the surprising relationships between different species.
And with all the discoveries in phylogenetics, we begin to understand how life came to be how it is today. Additionally, we can use the DNA between two different species to produce groundbreaking discoveries to change the world as we know it. Whether it's analyzing the DNA of prehistoric organisms or studying speciation, we can continue to use the wonders of nature, biology, and ecology to change the world and build a better future.